Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. Who am I? I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. In this podcast, I wanted to talk about Valorant. Many of you listening maybe have heard of the new first-person shooter by Riot Games called Valorant that aims to make the game as accessible to as many people as possible and maintain as even a playing field as possible. So really try to crank down on the cheating and the aimbots and the hacks to make sure that in-game purchases, and at least in-game purchases that help boost your character's performance. Basically, Valorant is a game that tries to create a completely even playing field, that your success in the game is completely 100% based on your skill and nothing else. Nothing else that you've earned and nothing else that you've purchased through in-game purchases or DLC. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. I was having an interesting conversation with Josh, my friend Josh, and coworker Josh, who I've had on the show a couple times before. We had an interesting conversation, and I kind of wanted to share some points of that conversation with you. If you're not familiar with what Valorant is, it's a video game by Riot Games. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it's a game, it's a first-person shooter. You can think of it kind of like CSGO, if you know what CSGO is, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. You can think about it like PUBG, Players Unknown Battleground. You can think of it like Call of Duty. You can think of it like Gears of War. You can think of it like Fortnite. It's a first-person shooter. I'm just saying that's the genre. And it, to a degree, I would think it mostly copies kind of from. To me, it seems more like a blend of CS:GO and Fortnite. Just to me, the characters are kind of fanciful like Fortnite, but it's a stripped-down shooter at its core like CS:GO. Except that the whole point of Valorant's existence, the whole point of Riot Games making Valorant, was that it strips out all the incentives and in-game purchases that help make your character more powerful, or give you an advantage over another player. There are nerfs and buffs for each player. There are strengths and weaknesses to each character. There are characters that are super offensive, that have all the guns and powerful guns and can move really fast maybe, but they are extremely vulnerable. Almost like Golden Gun in GoldenEye, one shot, one kill. You can have all the firepower in the world, but you are extremely vulnerable. Your weakness is that you cannot sustain much damage. Then there are other characters that you can choose that are slow, that have weaker weapons, but have all the defense in the world. They can take 100 times more damage than a strictly offensive character. But the point is, and that's just a general glancing, that's not exactly the buffs and nerfs of Valorant characters, but you get the picture. The point is that it's all balanced out. The main thing that Josh and I were talking about earlier in respects to Valorant is that it's still in beta right now. The general public can't play this. They are still battening down the hatches and tightening things up, getting it ready for public release. But that doesn't mean that there aren't already complaints and concerns about Valorant. I haven't played Valorant. I haven't gotten an advanced copy of Valorant. I'm not a huge Twitch streamer or anything like that. I don't have any advanced access to Valorant. But that doesn't mean that you and I can't go out there and already read initial concerns and complaints with Valorant. One of the major aspects of Valorant, the even playing field part of Valorant, is that it is going above and beyond to limit and try to eliminate all possibility of hacking the game. What hacking the game means, for those of you who don't play online video games, is there are people who know how to get the source code. Maybe they don't even need the source code, but they can hack the game in some way to give them an advantage in the game. They can write a hack. A very common hack in these first-person shooters is commonly referred to as an aim bot, AIMBOT. So picture you're holding a gun and you're aiming it. An aim bot helps you automatically, for better or worse, lock on to an enemy to take a clean headshot or body shot or whatever, or make sure it increases your odds that your shot, when you pull the trigger in the game, is going to do damage to another player. That's what an aimbot is. An aimbot also exists in a game like Rocket League, where it's just cars and a giant soccer ball, where you hit the ball, and no matter how you hit the ball, it's going to automatically go towards the opponent's goal. That's an aimbot in Rocket League. So I'm just using aimbot as an example of one of the things, one of the hacks, one of the tricks, one of the cheats that Valorant is trying to put ironclad defenses against, to make it extremely hard, if not impossible, for players to hack the game to enable any sort of cheat that gives them any advantage over any other player in the game. So the main complaint, the main concern thus far is that apparently, as of now, in order to achieve this, you need to download something to your system, a bit of software to your system, an application to your system that runs in the background of your computer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when you're not playing the game. So when you log out of Valorant, you turn off Valorant, and you're just on Facebook, you're just writing a book report, you're just doing schoolwork, you're just cruising around eBay, whatever you're doing on the computer, that just because Valorant isn't running, it did install a bit of software in there to run in the background on your computer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that makes sure you aren't hacking Valorant. That makes sure you're not accessing Valorant servers in any unscrupulous way, that is scanning your system constantly to make sure that you don't have any bit of Valorant's code in there being used outside of its folders or whatever, or it's looking for any red flags in your system that Riot Games could use to ban you, that could use to see that, hey, this person, what is this little thing they're working on? He visited a Facebook page about Valorant cheats. Is this a red flag? Do we need to send them an email or a warning or ban them altogether? It's constantly searching your system to make sure you are not engaging in any sort of cheat activity when it comes in regards to Valorant. And that's a cause for concern, if it isn't obvious. Now, one could argue, well, you have cookies enabled and all sorts of things enabled that are constantly looking at what you're doing and what you're shopping for. So when you're on eBay looking at, in my case, a Palm Pilot, that when you go over to Facebook, you're not seeing advertisements for used Palm Pilots on Amazon or whatever. That already happens. There are already programs that run in the background of your computer 24/7. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to see what you're shopping for, see what you're looking at, so that they can advertise to you. I've talked about that many, many times before on Geek Therapy Radio. The rub is that you can't, for a lot of these programs, you can opt out. You don't have to enable cookies in websites. You're seeing a lot of websites that you go to that says, do you want to enable cookies? Cookies help us do all these sorts of things, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do it. You can opt out. You can ad block. You can use ad blocker. You can use all sorts of antivirus scans. Whatever you want, you can have them or you can't have them. You can enable them or disable them. With Valorant, though, you have to have it. Apparently, you have to have that program running in the background 24/7. And if for some reason you stop running it, when next time you upload or you turn on Valorant, it could theoretically say, hey, we notice you disabled this software within the last 24 hours. You can't run Valorant for a while. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. The only point is that to have to keep the level playing field, to try to ensure that nobody's cheating, they have to have this program running in the background, and that rubs a lot of players in the wrong way, as it should. It is a concern. I'm only reporting that it's a concern, and I'm only giving you the opinion that I can understand the concern. I can certainly see where the concern falls. Is the price of an even playing field is the value of having an equal playing field worth the price of having your computer snooped on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year by Riot Games to make sure you are not cheating or engaged in any sort of cheating-like activity? And ultimately, that question can be answered by the people downloading Valorant, by the people who purchased and buy Valorant. Is it a free-to-play? Let me double-check that. Valorant free-to-play? Let me see this. I want to say it was. It's supposed to be free-to-play. Because there's a question and answer part of the website that answer this frequently. When does Valorant launch? Let's just go through these FAQs. When does Valorant launch? Summer 2020. How do I get into closed beta? Well, register, blah, blah, blah. What regions is Valorant going to be free to play? Valorant is entirely free to play, but you can purchase in-game cosmetics. That's what I was saying earlier by, yes, you can purchase in things that visually help the game or make your character look a different way, but you cannot purchase in-game buffs. You cannot make your character more powerful either by earning it or through purchasing it. So yes, it's free to play, but you can buy hats and you'll be able to buy different outfits for your characters or whatever. So ultimately, still, whether I'll take the purchase the game part out of the equation. Is it still worth it to you to download for free, knowing that part of downloading it for free, like downloading so many other things for free, is that the company's putting something in your computer to monitor what you're doing, at least while you're using the software. And I think that's where it's a little bit different for Valorant, is that other games you shut it down. What is it called in Call of Duty? What was it called? Punk Buster? Do they still use Punk Buster for Call of Duty? Punk Buster at least was an earlier form of cheat disabling, trying to hunt out punks, bust punks for cheating. But to my knowledge, when you fired up Call of Duty, Punk Buster also fired up. And matter of fact, Punk Buster fired up and started to run before you were even able to join a server to ensure that you weren't cheating. Well, that didn't really work out now, did it? But for Valorant, the little bit of code needs to run on your computer all the time, whether you're playing Valorant or not. It's not going to fire up that little bit of code. Only when you fire up Valorant, that bit of code is just going to be running all the time. That's the difference with Valorant. Separately, it's still talking about Valorant, but one of the cool ways that I think they're trying to even the playing field here is accessibility. Valorant doesn't require a ton of horsepower on your computer to run. Here are the official specs for Valorant. The minimum spec for 30 frames per second is a freaking Intel Core 2 Duo E8400. What year did that come out? Now that I've got Google open, what year did the E8400 come out? Let's go to Intel's ARC database. It's a 3 gigahertz CPU. It came out in the first quarter of 2008. It's 45 nanometer process. And for anybody who doesn't really care about all that technical jargon, it's a 12-year-old computer. Or sorry, it's a 12-year-old CPU. 12 years in terms of computing is a lifetime. So the most basic processor you need to run Valorant at 30 frames a second is the Core 2 Duo E8400 that came out when President Obama was elected. He wasn't in office. He claimed office in 2009. The GPU for minimum spec is an Intel HD 3000. Not much. So recommended spec for 60 frames per second is an Intel i3 4150, which came out, I want to say, around 2014, 2015. A little bit more recent, but still 5-6 years old. GPU for 60 frames a second, a GT 730, NVIDIA GeForce GT 730. Let me tell you, both of those things are not beefy. That is not a beefy processor. That's a dual-core hyper-threaded processor, and that is a budget GPU graphics processor at best. GeForce GT 730. That is some low-power old stuff, and that's what it needs for 60 frames a second. This is wonderful. This is wonderful news because that means that gamers don't have to go, if they are interested in Valorant, they don't have to build a $1,000 gaming PC or even a $500 gaming PC. Odds are, with these specs, whatever they're coming to the table with, Valorant will run at least 30 frames per second on there. So high-end spec requirements for 144 plus frames per second is an Intel Core i5 4460 at 3.2 gigahertz, still a 2015-ish processor, and an NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti. What do 1050 Ti's cost around abouts now? $100 or so? That is not. Let's see. I'm going to go to Micro Center because they usually have the best prices on these types of things. Let's type in 1050 Ti and see what's going on at Micro Center. Oh, wait. Is the 1050 Ti only? It's not only mobile. It can't be only mobile. GTX 1050 Ti. Don't yell at your headphones if I'm wrong here. Let's see. I guessed it was $110-ish. Yeah. Between 110 and 140-ish. So graphics cards can easily cost $700 or more, $1,000 or more. But that's what's crazy here is that for 144 plus frames per second, all you need is a 1050 Ti and an i5 from 2015. Actually, I'm going to look that up right now also because I have the specs open here. What is the 4460? Just because we're curious, and this is Geek Therapy Radio, and that's just what we do here. i5 4460. It's going to bring up ARC. I guess 2015, and its release was, second quarter of 2014. It's even older than I thought. Actually, I think I said 14 and 15. That's just semantics. So that takes care of the specs and the concerns regarding cheating and the measures that they're implementing to combat cheating. Is it worth it to you to have that code running on your computer 24/7, even if you're not playing Valorant? Only you can answer that question for yourself. I think by and large, most people are just going to do it. But where it gets interesting, though, and I just thought of this as we're going over the specs, what's the overhead? What is the system overhead to run that constantly in the background? Let's say you have that minimum spec computer, an E8400 Core 2 Duo from 2008. There's not a lot of wiggle room. There's not a lot of headroom. That's a dual core that is not even hyper-threaded. It's just dual core, and it's not a very powerful processor. How much headroom is having that little bit of code, that software running on the background of your computer 24/7 going to take? My guess is not a lot, but not a lot is relative. It's not a lot when you're working with a 10-core, 10th generation Intel processor or a Ryzen 7 whatever. It's negligible. It might not even register in Task Manager as using up any percentage of the system resources. But on an E8400 from 2008, it might be a 15% system load. Perhaps. Obviously, don't quote me on that. My point is, it'll probably show up on an E8400 where it probably won't even be noticeable on a modern CPU. That's something to think about also. So, moving on from all that, the next bit of discussion Josh and I had, and perhaps to me the most interesting, comes to complaints about maps and game changes, and some people are already complaining that it doesn't appear to be that there's a whole lot of actual substance to the game, that when you play Valorant, okay, you're going to play multiplayer, you're going to play on these different maps, but that it's going to get stale real quick. If the characters stay the same and the maps stay the same, people are complaining that there's not much else to do in the game. And that sparked the interesting conversation of, well, I haven't played Valorant, and most of my Most of my experience is with Rocket League by far. I have hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours, probably easily, in Rocket League over the last 5 or 6 years. I have them in Street Fighter, but let's stick with Rocket League here. I have a lot of experience with Rocket League and a lot of experience with players complaining about changes in Rocket League. So in Rocket League, back in 14 or 15 thereabouts, they introduced a few new courses. Rocket League always introduces new courses, but one of the courses I think was called Wasteland? It's a sandy course inside this old bombed out Mad Max looking kind of arena. And it was one of the first courses, if not the first course, that had a beveled playing field. That most of the playing field was flat, but as you approach the walls, it beveled about 20 degrees at a slant up to the vertical wall. So each map in Rocket League consists of a flat playing field, a vertical wall, and then the ceiling. And you can use all of it. You can drive over all of it. It was what we were all used to. When they introduced the beveled playing field, that about 10 feet out from the wall, it bevels upwards. Or actually, scale is hard to judge in Rocket League, but a few meters out from the wall, it bevels up towards the wall. There's an incline towards the wall. So many... The people who were complaining that Rocket League was getting sterile and boring were now complaining that they can't stand the beveled playing field, the beveled pitch in Rocket League. The same thing with, what is the other map? That was octagonal. It had 8 sides. It was not a rectangular playing field like all the other maps. It was now, it had 8 sides and 8 walls. They complained about that too. They complained that Neo Tokyo was way too difficult a map to render on their systems. And Neo Tokyo, I did agree with that. There's a lot going on in that map. There's a lot of overhead for the GPU to render that has nothing to do with the game. And I understand that that's where people were complaining. I had a decent graphics card, so Neo Tokyo wasn't a concern for me. The bigger complaints, let's go back to the beveled playing field, is that now you had people that bevel was throwing them off. They couldn't do their aerials anymore. They couldn't play the game they were used to playing because of those bevels. Whereas people like me, who were, I don't know, naively decent or decently naive, I liked the bevels. I liked that it added a little bit of extra twist, that you had to rethink how you played the ball if it was over there on the bevel. I liked that. But a lot of people still complained about it. So that just brings me around to Valorant. If people are already complaining in beta that there's not enough maps to play, I promise you that the same people who complain there weren't enough maps will complain about the new maps. Not everybody, believe me, not everybody, but there will be the complainers. Just like there were complainers with Rocket League when they not only introduced new maps, but they changed the playing field a little bit. People are going to complain in Valorant whenever they do update the maps with new maps. They'll complain about that. They always complain about changes. Gamers love to complain about changes rather than just get good and use the changes to their advantage. Because really that's what it's all about in gaming, is you make a change to the game, learn that before anybody else does, so that you can use it to your advantage. So instead of complaining about it and being a little whiny pants in the chats, in the forums, play it and get good at it. But that's the difference. And I don't mean that in a super harsh way. I mean that as an encouragement. You know what I do here on Geek Therapy Radio. I mean that as an encouragement. Instead of saying, oh, wow, these containers are in an odd shape, or there's a little bit of a fundamental difference here. It's a fundamental difference for everybody on that map. So you have 2 courses of action. Get good, practice, put the time in, get better, or complain about it. And really, that just boils down to what type of gamer that you are. If I may editorialize for a minute, I think that this is one of the difference between people who grew up playing team sports out in the grass and in the dirt with other players talking smack to you while you're standing on second base and you're talking smack to them and everyone's talking smack to each other. And the last thing you did, the last thing that would be taken seriously would be to complain. Imagine getting to first base, hitting the ball or whatever, getting a base hit, and then complaining to the other team, complaining to your opponent that the base felt about 2 inches further from the plate than on another field. Are you kidding me? You need to insult the other team's mother like everybody else. That's the only legitimate thing to do when you're standing on the bag or on the playing field. That's all you do is smack talk the other team. The other team. Your opponent. You only smack talk your opponent. That's another thing about online gaming and modern gamers that I do not understand is people will smack talk and tear down and try to destroy and insult their own teammates. As somebody who grew up playing team sports, I will never understand that. If the coach, or if there was any wind of your own teammate talking smack to you or another one of their own teammates on the bench, the coach would be in there, pardon my French, kicking ass faster than you can swing a baseball bat. That was not allowed. You do not denigrate and bring down your own teammates. That's not a winning strategy. A winning strategy is trying to get into your opponent's head, but even that is just part of the game. It's part of the fun. You're trying to think of creative ways to try to psych out your opponent, but you don't use those same methods on your own teammate. What the hell good is it to insult your teammate when he's on deck, ready to go up to bat? On deck, for those who don't play baseball, means that you're the next batter up to bat. Why would your own teammate be insulting you while you're standing there getting ready to bat? Because what's bad for one player is bad for the entire team. You're just bringing the entire team down. So playing Rocket League or whatever, and you have teammates rip and eat other teammates apart. I don't just mean light-natured ribbing. I mean they're actually telling other players that they suck and whatever. It's so stupid. It's part of modern online gaming that I don't get. But it's a part of it. You get used to it. But it's the whole cyberbullying thing. I'm just saying that I don't understand it. I don't get it because it's something that I didn't grow up experience playing a team sport. When you're on a team with somebody, all of you are in it together. And that doesn't seem to be the case sometimes now when you're playing. If there's one player on your team, let's say you're playing 3-on-3 Rocket League, which to me just seems completely chaotic now. It's 2-on-2 or nothing. If you're playing with 3 players on a team in Rocket League and one of your players obviously isn't as good as you or the other guy, I see no sense. I see no sense in getting on the chat and telling the person on your own team that they suck. Don't understand it. I'm not saying that I would tell somebody to stop it, but I just don't understand it. Actually, if I can only speak for me personally, here's why you don't want me on your team if you're this type of butthole online. If you're the type of butthole online that brings your own teammates down, that tries to insult your own teammates and destroy their will to play, somebody on your own team, the second I hear anything like that, the actual moment that I hear anything like that, I join the other team. I am playing against you, the butthole. So if it's 3 on Team Orange and 3 on Team Blue, now it's 4 on Team Orange. Or if not that, then I'm going to basically pick on the person doing the insulting. I'm going to intentionally whiff goals, and I might try to push them out of the way of the ball or bump them and just play the fool. Oops, I didn't know. Sorry. That's just, and I would never do that in, I should preface this. I would never act that way in ranked matches. In ranked matches, you have to deal with whatever you have to deal with because your rank depends on it. But in casuals, you're getting to, hey, bud, you're insulting your own teammate. We're in casuals, dude. Casuals, stop taking this so seriously. Usually, and I can only speak for what I do, and again, it's only in Rocket League that I can speak to this. Well, it's in any game, but I mostly play Rocket League. If I'm in a match that's terrible, either it's way one-sided, maybe the other team is just god tier legendary. I'm versus Kronovi and somebody else, and there's no hope for me or my team. Just no hope at all. It's going to be 10-0 no matter what I do. I use that opportunity to practice some skills, to practice some aerials, to practice some wall jumps, to improve my game. Same thing if I'm playing on a match where the other team is pretty good, I'm pretty good, and then I have a teammate that's just terrible, that's just completely terrible. I'm not going to tell them that they're terrible, but I will use the opportunity to improve my own game. If I know that I have to simultaneously play defensively and offensively, play the entire court, play the entire field, that I cannot rely on positional playing, that's just going to help me get better at control. It's going to help me get better at ball control. It's going to help me get better offensively. It's going to help me get better defensively. That 2v1 is going to help that v1 get much better, because it's going to require all the more skill to even hold a chance. So my default in those type of undesirable situations is just to use the opportunity to improve my game and to prove my skills. The last thing on my mind is to take up time insulting another player. That's the furthest thing. And I think it all boils down to it's just different generations, I guess. That there are the odds that another online gamer of the generation underneath me, and I don't mean this as an attack at all, it's just different generations. Every older generation blames the generation underneath them for problems, and every young generation blames the generation above them for the problems. Generations just blame each other. I'm just talking about difference in generations. The odds are that when I'm playing an online match and the people are younger, if you can hear them in the chat and they sound younger, or they somehow you just know that they're in college or they're younger than you. I'm 36 years old and I'm playing against 20-year-olds. The odds are there's a good chance that they may not have played team sports, and they may not have the set of values that I have. That's not a knock against them. It's just a difference of exposure and a difference of environment. I don't know what to call it. All I know is that I don't understand the concept of trying to destroy your own teammate when you could be using that time you're spending typing, you could be spending, or chatting, you could be spending improving your skills. The same goes for any sort of team esport, whether it's a massively multiplayer online game, or it's Dota, or League of Legends, or CSGO, or anything like that. I don't think at the pro level, you're ever going to see players berating each other. At that point, it's a team sport. I treat that as I think more of that as a traditional team sport, just like baseball or football or basketball, that once you get so good at an esport that you're sitting in the same room with teammates, 3, 4, 5 players on the same team, all sitting shoulder to shoulder with each other, communicating with each other shoulder to shoulder. At that point, it's more of a traditional team sport, when you can smell another player's sweat, you can see another player's sweat, you can see the frustration on their face, the intensity on their face, whatever on their face, disappointment on their face. That's more of the team aspect. It's way more of a camaraderie than you will ever get playing online with people you don't know randomly. That's a key point in there, randomly. You can do meetups online, believe me, with other players from around the world that you get to know quite intimately. You know what's going on in their lives. You know what they're dealing with their parents. You know what they're dealing with at school. You know what they're dealing with in their romantic relationships. You know everything about you. Nowadays, you can know everything about a person except what they smell like. You can see their face, you can see their videos, you can be as in touch with them as possible. You can have as much human connection as possible with people from around the world now. And really, all you don't know about them is what they smell like. Pretty much. So when you're playing with players like that you know intimately like that, there's probably not so much of the trying to tear your own teammates down aspect. Versus when you're paired up randomly, a random casual match, it's just this buffer. There's a screen and a keyboard and 1,000 miles between you and the other person. So now I'm just going to vent my frustrations on this random person. Instead of getting good, instead of improving my own game, I will just flame the chat with how terrible my teammate is, or blame my teammate when the match is done. Well, if my teammate didn't suck so bad, I think we would have won. Really? Really? It's because you're bad. I mean, it means you weren't good enough to pick up the slack, really is all that means. You were not good enough to pick up the slack for your teammate. Get better so that you can pick up slack. If the other person wants advice to get better, they will ask you for it. That's the other thing, unsolicited advice. And I don't mean going off on some sort of tangent, but we're talking about esports here. You'll be playing, you're having a rough time in this match, and then you'll just get people saying, hey, you should jump, you should double jump or whatever off that wall, or you should lead the opponent on. When you're taking a shot with a sniper rifle, you really need to lead them on, and you really need to account for Kentucky windage, and you really need to account for the curvature of the earth and all this kind of stuff. I appreciate thanks, but I didn't ask for the advice. Unsolicited advice can be just as offensive as an insult. Because it's the way it's packaged. You need to, hey, you suck. You need to jump sooner. You need to shoot earlier. You need to prejudge your actions. Or, hey, if I need advice, I'll ask for advice. Otherwise, it's casuals. Shut up. I don't know what you're doing in Omaha, Nebraska, but here in Houston, Texas, I'm sitting in my chair eating honey Dijon potato chips, drinking a rum and root beer, and my cat is taking up half of my chair, and I'm listening to the Trailer Park Boys podcast in the background. This is casuals. I may or may not even be wearing pants. This is casuals. If I was in ranked, it would be a different story, but we're in casuals. So keep the unsolicited advice to yourself. If I want the advice, I'll ask for it. Casuals is all about trying different things. Obviously, what I'm trying isn't working, or I'm just having a bad match right now. You didn't see, bro, I wasn't playing with you for the 30 previous matches where I executed everything perfectly. And now this is the match where everything's fallen apart for some reason. You're judging my performance, not that I would really care or should care, but you're judging my performance based on 2 minutes of interaction in a single video game. That's what it boils down to. Why don't you make sure your house is in order before my house is in order? I cannot be bothered to brush the potato chips off of my belly to lean forward and type on the keyboard. Knock it off. So, back to Valorant. And this will apply. Everything I just said in the past 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it was, I've lost count now, will apply to Valorant, does apply to Valorant. But the point I last made about Valorant is that whatever changes to the game that are made, there will always be people who will complain about it. No matter what Riot Games does to Valorant into the future, people will complain about it. Gamers will complain about it. Every gamer is elite, god tier, master of complaining. Everyone, even me. We are so good at complaining and so concise about what our complaints are, but we're sloppy players. Last thing in a lot of our minds is just to get better. Yeah. What is this at? 39 minutes? I think we'll start wrapping it up here. I will let you know as on the way out here what I'm geeking out over and what I'm working on. Oh, I'll let you know also first that I just uploaded my latest video to my YouTube channel. It deals with revisiting my PSP 1000. While my wife and I moved into the new house, I unearthed my original PSP. So the video is obviously not going to be a technical layout of the PSP 1000, of a console that came out in 2005, 2006, around that era. It's basically what that particular PSP 1000 means to me. It's my journey with that PSP 1000 since I bought it in 2007. So it's kind of more poetic in a way, more introspective, but it's up. It's doing well as far as initial launch videos do for me. I think it's at 120 something views right now in the last 20 hours or something, which for a small channel like mine, it's decent. I'm just letting you know if you're interested. It's up there, Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube. The next video, personal video in the pipe that I'm working on, is what I'm geeking out about right now. My main geek thing, and that is PDAs. Personal digital assistants. If you listen to my last podcast, I had Colin from This Does Not Compute on YouTube, and we talked about PDAs. Specifically, the time period around when PDAs were popular. It was this kind of nebulous era where we thought smartphones were as good as... not smartphones. I apologize. Where we thought cell phones were about as good as cell phones would get. You had the venerable Nokia 3310. I had the Nokia 3310. Cell phones were serving as much of a purpose as cell phones could. But as far as mobile computing, you had PDAs, so Palm Pilots, Windows CE devices, Windows mobile devices, little handheld things that look like the smartphones we have today, but obviously were not nearly as connected or nearly as capable as the smartphones we have today. It was that entire era, basically, between the arguably as early as the mid 1990s through 2007 or whenever the iPhone came out and changed everything. That whole era of personal digital assistants, the Apple Newton, the Palm Pilot, Windows made a tablet or two, Microsoft made a tablet or two, Windows CE powered devices. It was a magical time. So I've been geeking out about PDAs. I have purchased several Palm Pilots, handspring visor, different models of Palm Pilot. On my doorstep, as I'm recording right now, I have my hunt was for a Philips Nino. Maybe it's called a Philips Nino, but I don't think, even though it's spelled that way, there's no inflection, there's no squiggly over the other end, so I think it's just Philips Nino. Nino was kind of a term for small, micro type thing. I had a Philips Nino, so my hunt was to find a Philips Nino. And as far as I know, I don't think there's any other Philips Ninos available. I think I scooped up the last two. I had a Philips Nino 500 in 1998, and I was desperately searching for a Nino 500. I found one, $25 or something like that, but it didn't have a cradle, so I needed a cradle for it, so I ordered another Philips Nino, the 300, that had the grayscale screen. The 500 had color screen, so I ordered a Nino 300 also because it came with the cradle. It was also super cheap. All in, I think I've spent less than $100 on my current PDA fascination. And so I have a good swath of representation from all eras and years of PDAs from different manufacturers and different operating systems. So I'm geeking out about PDAs right now. And the video that I'm working on, that I'm typing the entire script on, a Palm Pilot, is going to be about PDAs. A little my experience with PDAs over the years. Now, my dream computer. This has been my dream computer since at least 1997, if not 1998. My ultimate dream computer is an HP Jornada 680 Palm Top PC running Windows CE. That's my dream computer. You can say, "Oh, Johnny, you've been talking about building a Threadripper." Yeah, an AMD Threadripper PC with 16 cores or 32 cores or whatever. Well, that's what I want to build for my daily driver, for my production PC to edit videos and in my workstation, of course. and gaming PC, of course, everything. I want that to be my main computer. That's on the list. That costs money, so it's not very high on the list. My 4790K and GTX 980 are still doing just fine. But my ultimate dream computer since the late 90s was the HP Jornada 680 palm top PC. It's about as big as a smartphone, but it's clamshell, kind of like a Nintendo DS. And it has a keyboard and a screen, which is extremely letterbox. I don't even know what the aspect ratio. It is extreme widescreen. But it's my dream computer. It costs, I'm sure I can get one for a little bit under $100, but I just ordered, 5 or 6 PDAs, and I cannot justify right now, as of right now, splurging another 100 for my dream computer. I can just hope that it's there in a little bit, in a few weeks or whatever, whenever, you know what, maybe tonight I might just say I can't stand it and order one. Who knows? And just apologize to my wife later. That's not healthy. I would talk to her about it. Or at least let her know what's going on. So that's my dream computer, HP Jornada 680. Is it Jornada? It's not Jornanda. HP Jornada. HP. Let me write it down here. Let me whisper to you. HP Jornada. Jornada 680. Yep. There's some ASMR for you. That's what I'm geeking out about right now. If I got the HP Jornada 680, I would do an entire video just dedicated to that. You can look at YouTube right now. Even for I'm going to do the same with the Philips Nino. Maybe not a specific video about the Philips Nino, but also maybe I might. The thing about this kind of old tech, a lot of times, this old forgotten tech, is that it is forgotten. And so if you do go onto YouTube to find any videos about the tech or see someone using it or set up or anything like that, you're looking at a YouTube video uploaded in 2007 from a camera from 2007. With a microphone built into the camera from 2007 with resolution from 2007. You're in 144p club or 240p club. It's unwatchable, unlistenable. The lighting's terrible. You can't see the screen for crap. So one of the things I like to do with my YouTube channel is get real close with when I'm reviewing products or showing you something. I get so close that you can see the finish of the paint, that you can see the finish of the surface that it was built on, that you can see the individual little ridges of the plastic, the scratches in the plastic even. I do these as close as I can, these macro shots, because I want my viewer to get a sense that they can smell the thing, that they're so close that they know through their eyes what it feels like. I don't hate these product reviews, but there's a lot of product reviews. Here's the laptop, here's the phone or whatever, and it's kind of a wide angle. They get the whole phone in there. No, get as close. I want you macro with that. Get so close you can smell the new plastic. So that's what I do whenever I review anything, like the PSP. I get you so close to that thing you feel like you can touch it. You can see the texture, you can touch it. So all I'm saying is that when I do get an HP Jornada 680, and I go home and I get the Philips Nino 500 that I had in 1998, which I was looking for that one. I'm so glad I found it. That when I do a video on it, it's going to be a high quality video, not necessarily it's not overproduced. My videos are certainly not overproduced because I don't know what I'm doing well enough to make it overproduced. But I do know my way around a camera a little bit. And I definitely know my way around the microphone and the audio side of things. So I'm just trying to do the best video I can about this piece of tech so that anybody just wondering about, oh, what is that palm top computer I had back in the 90s, that they find the video that so far stands out head and shoulders above all the other crap from 2007, 2008, 2009. I don't want to call it crap. It's just they were working with what they got. YouTube was insanely different. Insanely different back before 2010. It is not what it is now. It's not the juggernaut corporate machine that it is now. It was just people with these crappy cameras, point and shoot cameras, telling a story, showing a thing. That's what it was. The tech YouTuber space really changed the game. But that's what I'm geeking out about right now. So that's it. And I can't geek out about PDAs and palm tops and that kind of stuff without the auxiliary geekiness, meaning I'm finding a more semi-permanent home for my Windows 98 computer. A lot of these PDAs obviously are not going to work with Windows 10. Windows 10 hates legacy. It hates old things. Windows 10 despises its elders. So I need to have the Windows 98 PC up and running and the Windows XP PC up and running. I keep the Windows 98 PC around because it's a Pentium 3, it's legacy, it has MS-DOS, it can run MS-DOS software, MS-DOS games. It can run a lot of, it has USB ports on it. Me and Colin talked about this, USB ports on it. So it's a bridge machine between my Windows 10 machine and the Palm Top, that if I can get things from the Palm Pilot onto the Windows 98 machine, that means I can get it onto USB from the 98 machine and take that USB stick and put it in the Windows 10 machine to read the notes or see the data. It's a go-between. So I'm geeking out about my kind of retro PCs right now, rearranging the Geek Cave to take the XP machine off the shelf and the Windows 98 laptop and kind of give it more permanent area workspace, which also means that I got to take my CRT monitor from off the shelf and put it in a more permanent situation on the desk. So that's all stuff that I'm geeking out about. And I don't release as many podcasts as I did. I was doing 5 days a week. So now it's down to 3 days, and I'm trying to stick on that schedule. It's much more manageable. This podcast even is going 51 minutes, and I cut out 25 minutes from the beginning of this podcast to let you behind the curtain, as I like to do on Geek Therapy Radio. I already cut out 25 minutes of content from this podcast because I went on a rant for 25 minutes at the beginning about the hurdles that the show faces, my place in this radio market when I do broadcast on the actual radio, the uphill battle that it is, and how much I appreciate having you listen to the show because of all of those reasons. That went on for 25 minutes, and I thought, you know what? Don't need that. Don't need that in there. I could do separate podcast about that stuff. I'm talking about Valorant, and I've already talked 20 minutes extra about PDAs and things. At least 10 minutes extra. You know what? Thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. You know me. My regular listeners know me. Thank you for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. Above all else, know that you are worthy of love, both giving and receiving love, and I mean that always from the bottom of my heart, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. So embrace your geek thing, share it with others. Geeks are sexy. You are sexy because you're a geek. And I know I'm sexy. What's that? Oh. Anyways, thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I'll attach you guys to the next one. When I can't talk anymore, that's a good time to wrap it up. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.